Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about Birriwa Reserve Outdoor Youth Space, which is in the Camden local government area, and I'm going to start by kind of setting the scene of what Camden is and what Birriwa means for Camden heading into the future. It's a story of transformation, as Camden is generally. So for those of you who don't know, this is Camden. Camden's about 60 kilometres from the CBD of Sydney. It covers a land area of about 200 square kilometres, and it's on the southern edge of the western Sydney and southwestern priority growth areas. And I think when a lot of people, if you're familiar with Camden, when a lot of people think about Camden, this is the image that's conjured up, and it certainly has been for most of its life up until the past, say, 30 years. It's a kind of a country town supported by agricultural land uses and an agricultural economy. And these photos are both taken in that little red dot down there in the corner. This is probably one of the biggest changes that we've seen over the past 10 to 15 years, and this is the western and the southwestern priority growth areas, and that covers around 30 to 40% of the land area of Camden. And so what that's meant for us has been population. So about 15 years ago we were sitting at about 40,000. Today we're sitting about 88,000, and in about another 18 years we're going to be at about 236,000. And that puts us kind of on the scale of what Parramatta is today and what the city of Sydney is today, and the likelihood is that will probably increase as densities are increasing around Leppington, which is in the north of the suburb. So just to put some other numbers around that, that's in the last 4 years a 40% increase in population, and in the last 4 years a 245% increase in the growth rate. So we're growing and growing ever more quickly. And just another couple of stats, I won't get into all of them, but some interesting ones is on the bottom right, our expenditure. So in the past 4 years, our gross expenditure as a council has almost doubled. And in the top right, the amount of playgrounds we've gotten has grown by about 10 to 15%. So there's growth everywhere across the council. And just as a way to support all of that population, there's lots of infrastructure upgrades happening around the place. So I think most people would be familiar with the Western Sydney Airport, the plans for it. That's just to the north of Camden. There's supporting rail infrastructure. Some of it's been implemented, some will be implemented over the next 10 to 15 years. Billions of dollars worth of road upgrades crisscrossing the local government area. Most of these roads were 15 years ago single lane country roads. Now they're kind of 4 lanes in each direction. Very, very large road reserves. And then one of the biggest ones is the Outer Sydney Orbital, which is a freight rail, passenger rail and a motorway corridor preservation that runs around the outside of Camden. So there's lots of pressure from population, and there's lots of pressure from infrastructure to support that population. So what that means, and probably the best way that I've found to kind of understand what that means for public spaces or for spaces generally, is to understand what that means on the ground. So Gledswood Hills in 2009 was a golf course. It's in the priority growth area, and this is what it looks like today. And this is a kind of an exact before and after. So 9 years sees a big transformation. I think a lot of people would be familiar with Oran Park, the old Oran Park racetrack. This was in 2009, and this is today. And then finally Elderslie, which is outside the growth area, but there are pockets outside the growth area that are experiencing growth, and this is closer to the town centre of Camden. Massive transformations. And so what that means for us as an organisation is that we're having to adapt to that change and trying to develop different modes and different ways to deliver the services for our new community. But it also means that we're in a really, really unique position to promote and deliver spaces, public spaces for active living. So that kind of sets the scene of where Camden sits at the moment, and the case study is going to talk about how we as an organisation have responded to date through some public space initiatives. So where we're talking about is outside the growth area, so it's that little blue dot that you can see just to the south of the growth area. And it's in a suburb of Mount Annan. And so Mount Annan started development in the 1980s, the development continued in the 90s, and the character of the place is kind of a garden-themed suburb. There's a kind of an existing mature native tree canopy, and as well as that, it's quite well connected to its regional landscape. So the big green blob just over on the right, that's the Mount Annan Botanic Gardens. The green circles are large open spaces throughout the suburb. The yellow line is the active transport cycle network, which has regional connections. And the blue dot is where Birriwa was situated. So it's, in terms of where it sits in the suburb and what it can connect to, it's quite well positioned. The challenge, however, despite all of that, was that there was high levels of antisocial behaviour, and that was, in some cases, crime and violent crime. There were a series of assaults in the reserve, lots of vandalism, and as a result of that, very, very low usage by the community and low activity, and that kind of obviously reinforced the issue. No one wanted to go there, and so no one went there. As a result of that as well, there was no community ownership. And as a result of when Mount Annan was developed in the 80s and 90s, there was a kind of a burgeoning teenage population that were crying out for activities within Mount Annan. And however, there were some significant positives about the space as it existed. The kind of the bones of the space were good. So it was very centrally located. Mount Annan Leisure Centre just to the north, the Mount Annan Town Centre as well just to the north. It was part of a larger piece of open space. Easy connection over a major arterial road to another suburb, Currans Hill, just over the Narellan Road, which is just up the top there. And as I mentioned already, it was well situated in the regional landscape. So there was a problem, but the kind of bones of the space were there, and the makings of a great space were there that we just needed to build upon. So quite simply put, Council's vision of the space was to create a space that would basically play a central role in the lives of the young people of the area. So quite a simple aspiration, but quite challenging when you think about how that could work. So just to run through the process that we went through to get there. So the idea of Birriwa came out of our recreation demand study, which identified the demographics and how we could respond in public space to those demographics. And one of the top 10 priorities was a youth space, an adventure playground for the people in Mount Annan and the surrounding suburbs. So the council adopted that in 2014, and through the rest of 2014, the council and the council officers went through a series of workshops to find the most appropriate place for Birriwa, and that's when we landed on, for the space, and that's when we landed on Birriwa. After that, we consulted with the community, and this is probably an important point that I'll come back to later, is that when we consulted on the location, we got one response from the community. So it wasn't very a community that was engaged in public space and the possibilities of public space. And so the idea and the possibilities of Birriwa started to grow when the design commenced in around January 2015. So over the next 6 months, there was workshops held with the community, workshops held with the council, and as you can see down the bottom, as a result of that discussion, the council decided to increase the budget from 600 to $1.5 million. And that was primarily because I think when it was originally conceived, it was conceived as an adventure playground. And I think the idea that you would put something on the space. The shift in thinking was around a holistic transformation of the space, building on what was there rather than putting something in the space. So council endorsed an increased budget. And again, as we continue the discussion with the community and with council, 2 further times, the council decided to increase the budget. So ultimately, we ended up with a budget of 1.85 million, and everyone was very, 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 very happy with that and very happy with the outcome. And it was completed in May 2016, and this is what it looks like today. So it's a very active space, and it continues to be an active space. So it's been in the ground for 2 years, and it's very, 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 very well utilised by the community. So a couple of specific things that we did within the space. So fitness equipment, it's fitness equipment that you can plug your phone into, and as you get active, it charges your phone. As well as that, a variety of different spaces. So top right, within the reserve itself, there's a variety of different zones. It's not a playground and other spaces. There's a variety of different spaces that you can inhabit, and you can inhabit them in different ways. Bottom left is an amenities building, which is one of the reasons why council increased the budget. And the amenities building has been decorated by a local artist working with local high schools. So when it was being constructed, we went out and there was a bunch of high school kids with their high vis and spray cans working with the local artist to decorate that. And as a result of that, we haven't seen one incidents of vandalism on the toilet, but that's it. And it's been in the ground for 2 years, so that's been a big success. And as well as that, bottom right was old tennis courts that were repurposed into multi-purpose courts. So I was trying to intensify the level of activity in the site to make sure we got lots of different people. And so then, if I kind of link it back to Camden generally, and what this means for Camden, it's kind of undeniable for us that Birriwa has been a place transformed, and it's gone far beyond, I think, Council's original aspiration, which was a place for young people, but it's also become a place that families come. So we see people coming down at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning to reserve the barbecues. It's a place for the whole family. So it's been a great success, and I think positioning Birriwa back towards the growth, what it means for us as an organisation is it has a huge impact on the potential future places that are going to service the growing population. And I've kind of thought of that in a few different ways, and one of those is understanding. So at an organisational level, at a council level, and a community level, there's now a deep understanding of the possibilities of public space and what public space can do for the community. And the best way that I've kind of to understand that is through increased consultation responses. So we're currently out to tender with a project of similar scale, going through design of that. In the most recent round of consultation, we got 43 responses from the community. So although it's not as good as it could be, it's better than one. And so I think that the community, the community is starting to engage with public space. And so for us, it means that Birriwa was the new benchmark. When people talk about public space in Camden, they constantly refer back to Birriwa. Funding, what that's meant for us is that people realise what increased funding can do, but it's also led to real results. So in this year alone, we've got 4 open space projects with a combined value of $4.5 million, and that was just increased in the last week to $5 million, and then additional 5 upgrades with a combined value of $500,000. So prior to Birriwa, I think the biggest spend was around $600,000, and so it's a transformation in the way that space is funded in Camden. The process, it was a design-led collaborative process, and I think that there's now a recognition of the value of design in creating spaces like these, but also at a council level, the councillors want to be involved in the decisions, and now they've got a deep understanding, and so it's with each of the projects that we do now, the council are invested in the outcomes and invested in the design decisions that are made along the way. And standards. Shade and amenities is something that's kind of an ongoing discussion with the community, and it's something that again wasn't considered as at the beginning of the project. But I think as a result of the way that people are using the space, they want to spend more time there. They want to stay there for longer periods of time. So there's a new standard expected out of public space, and that also goes to maintenance. So there's a high level of maintenance with Birriwa, and people want that. The community want that, and so that's not without its challenges for a council, but it's something that we're trying to meet, and at the very least, to having discussion around. So my final thoughts are that I see the project can be...
Okay, again, one quick question. First hand up. Yes, right over there.
An organisation, a community, a council thinks about the possibilities of space.
I must say, these last 2 presentations, private sector and local government doing good things. So, this isn't good for a cynical old socialist like me.
Process, and it was bringing the community and the councillors along through the design process.
On for Rick. No, sorry, we've moved on from Rick. You have to talk to Rick at lunchtime.
And to link it
sorry,
back to...
we didn't have questions for Rick. The time was run out. One question for Tim. Got to be strict here.
I think that for us to have...
I only get paid on performance.
With the community and to kind of reposition public space now, I kind of think that Birriwa's full impact is probably yet to come as we see those ideas about public space filter into the growth areas. So I just want to acknowledge the project team, because it was lots of people through council that helped do the work, and just want to say thank you for your time.